electronic meeting. So those of you that are out there in the audience that are not here and would like to join us, it is on washingtoncity.org/meetings. And we welcome you to listen in. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda.
All right, thank you. And I'll need a second if I may.
Get a
Well,
second.
Councilman Staley does some repair work.
Did you make a motion?
I made the motion.
Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you.
We're having to utilize our council tonight to repair items.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the purpose of our meeting tonight is to discuss our parameters when we get in the position to hire our new city manager. I'm appreciative of Ruth coming in. Perhaps, Ruth, you could start it off for us. And I hope, gentlemen, that you have received these two documents.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. I just thought I'd kind of share with you a little bit of the process of what we've done in the past with the city manager. And so we have several options, but just to kind of lay out there what we have been doing and see what your take is on that. So on a first round, normally we're going to have several applicants. So you're looking at upward around 50 possible or more.
I'd be interested to know how many you've got now.
33 as of 5 minutes ago. So we are up to 33. We have another week to go. And a lot of applicants don't submit until that last week, I found. So I anticipate we'll have at least 40, if not upward to the 50. Now, wanting to interview all 50 would take you a lot of time to do that. And that's a possibility if you choose to do that. So you will have a full copy of all 50, 60, 70 applications to have to review when the closing date closes. From there, I would propose that we do a first round electronic interview. And by doing that, there's some standards that you have to meet when you're interviewing. So applicants that meet the minimum qualifications, you would need to honor a interview to. And so by doing
Say
this,
that last part, honor a what?
you would have to give that interview. Anyone that's meeting the minimum qualifications of the job requirements, you would want to give, they've earned the right for that interview, unless you have a different criteria to elimination process. So by doing
Could you have one could you have a different criteria that's not specified in the what you posted?
you could. So, I mean, you still, I think you're kind of on that legal borderline of you could, but I would say don't. And I say that because you can do that down the road with a criteria elimination round. But your first round elimination would be every applicant, whether there be 100 or 40. You're going to send out this electronic questionnaire that's going to ask some specific questions, which those questions you guys should have a copy of.
Okay.
And by doing that, now legally, no one could come back and file a claim with you to say, well, you know, I had more experience in this one or that one. This one got an interview and I didn't, and why? Because everyone participated in the interview. Everyone had a first round interview. And from there, you guys now have the ability to take their response mirrored up with their application and then compare. So based upon maybe they have a very good application, very good questions, that might be a yes pile. I want to move on to round two. You may have a weaker application, but strong answers or opposite. So based upon having the two pieces of paper together, you can now start to look at who do I want to now sit down and have an in-person interview on round two.
Ruth,
Yes.
and there may not be a good answer to this, but how many applicants do you think would be left after this first round of filtering? Are you thinking that half or a quarter of the applicants would then go through to the second round, or what's typical?
It's just kind of depending on their responses and their qualifications. A lot of our
Because
more-
we would be the ones sifting through those, Councilman. So
and it kind of depends. It just kind of depends from job to job. A lot of times we're interviewing anywhere between 10 to 15 on a normal round. It could be less, it could be more, but it's going to be based upon what we see on the applications and what we're looking for and what you want to pursue based upon that.
When, in this first filtering round, as we sift through, are there certain things we can say, you know, for example, no experience in government management? Do we have to have clear reasons to disqualify, or can we say, just I'm reading his application, reading her application or his application, reading this person's application, I'm reading their responses, just not very impressed. Is that enough to put it into the no pile?
I would put that on after your round one. So everyone's going through round one.
Right. After round one, they're all getting email questions. This is the round two sifting
you
where
can
we're
decide.
reviewing.
I would come up in my mind, I would say, you know, based upon the ones you want, what's the highest, most critical criteria you want this manager to have? And it can be whatever we determine it to be. It could be you want it to be based on municipality experience. You know, what do they have? Do they have any municipality experience? What kind of management experience do they have? So it can be based off of education, it could be based off of experience, combination of both, government experience. It's the criteria that you would like to say, which is the most important criteria we want to weigh. Now, you may have three different piles because you may start out with saying, I want it to be based upon one criteria. But as you start going through 40 applications, you may find that there's some very strong candidates that might not meet that one, but you still want to interview them. And so, you know, I think you first have to go through, look at your applicants, and then decide, you know, what is it we're really looking for. And then when you hit that round two, you've got to be very consistent on going through all the interview questions, making sure that you're asking the same questions to all the applicants.
But having said that, Ruth, if you consider best practices, best hiring practices, and you can find many different guidelines of what those best practices are, ultimately the hiring body, whether it's a municipality or a business or a corporation, they have the say as to what those guidelines are. It's just that you have to be fair with each candidate and give each one the same opportunity. And that's why we want to ask the right question. But we would be entitled to ask any follow-up questions if the answer was a little bit unclear, or if they didn't fully understand what we were asking for. So it's not a glued down process to where we have to feel reserved or not frightened. I can't think of a better word, but we have the right to be able to ask and be a little bit inquisitive to make sure that they understand the question and then allow them to answer it. Correct?
Yes. And I think too, when you get into so let's go on round three, you hit your round three, you should have it narrowed down to a handful or less. And at that point, that's where I always use the term, you can probe a little deeper, meaning that these questions that you've asked in round two and the responses in round one, maybe you wanted to go a little deeper on information, wanted to find out a little bit more about a specific item. That's where you now can go a little more personal, ask them more, okay, this is a response you gave us on the last round. Can you tell me more about that? Tell me how that pertains to this position, or, you know, just go a little bit deeper. And those questions can vary, not being specifically the exact same questions to every applicant, because you're now looking at the final 2 or 3 candidates and you have some specific questions based upon their answers they've already given you that you're just following up on. So these are just follow-up questions to each applicant to say, here's the response that you gave us previous. Tell us a little bit more about that. And so that response is going to be different for each applicant. So you can follow up with each applicant's response.
So just to follow up, Ruth, thank you. That's great information. So each interview, you know, the first question that comes to mind is, are they timed? Because sometimes if you get a candidate that has a lot of give and take, you could potentially take twice as long with that candidate of the others. And is that a process that you just kind of can just see how it plays out on its own? There's not a time limit
We
or?
haven't put time limits on, and you'll get some that will just whip through questions and answer very well in 10 minutes, and some may take 40 minutes and just go on and on about from kindergarten all the way up through life.
See,
So,
and I look at the interview process and maybe the first round of interviews, we say, hey, we schedule these out 20 minutes apart, and you just say we have 20 minutes and we have our outline questions, and it's 4 or 5, and here they are. Here's your answer. Thank you for your coming in, and then move on.
Like the second round after the emailed questions.
Okay, so the first round of well, and that was my clarification. Is I'm talking after we've narrowed it down to the top 15 or whatever it is. We've narrowed it down to that top 15, and then we bring them in for that interview with the top 5 questions we want to ask them, and then and make and score them, like just a personal score. Like we'll all just kind of score them and kind of keep track of how it's laid out. That way, it helps you move forward and saying, hey, I like these top 3-4 people.
that's a good point to bring up, because I don't think I pointed that out on the email I sent you, because we do have a score sheet.
Okay.
So each applicant would have a score sheet, and you would score how they, a 1 to 5 or 1 to whichever it's usually a 1 to 5, 5 being high. And you would just score each applicant based on their response on that question.
There's an existing score sheet, you
We
said,
create one each
You-
position. We just
So
we
this
just
is-
take these
this is
same
a
questions for the
typical
applicant.
and easy to do,
Yep.
but tailored for this position.
That we would put each applicant's name on the score sheet, and the questions that are being asked, we put a space for you to fill in your comments that you want to make along the way.
So Ruth, the first round, when we're going through the 50 or so applicants, are we going to sit down with all 50 of them? Is that what you're saying? You're saying we should review those, decide which ones we want to bring forward. We all kind of do and meet together and decide, and that's how we work
I think
that.
you guys could go through them yourself.
Yeah. So the first
And the
first
time you
grouping
want?
you're going to send out, every single applicant is going to get the same 5 questions.
Correct.
They're going to answer those. We get those back.
And then you can,
Second grouping, after you've eliminated some of those, the second grouping, you're going to have them interview
interview in person.
in person, either via Zoom or present. Is that correct? Are you going to make allowance for that?
Or you're
Well, I think
comfortable.
we should give those the opportunity that may not be comfortable yet with COVID to have
Either or.
a Skype or whatever type of meeting we want.
You know what would, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to just agree with the mayor. I don't see that as a deterrent. I would hope they'd come down because I'd rather have a personal one, but I say come down or just come in to.
I would say if they make it to a third round, they have to come in.
Well, yeah, I'm saying the
Oh, yeah.
second round. The second round when we're narrowing it down to our top applicants.
But what concerns me is that Zoom sometimes works smoothly, but we've all had our moments with the system, whether we're speaking on mute, which could be perceived some way as being unfair if someone's not as familiar with it. So for me personally, I think that when we do interviews, they really need to be, we need to do it right so it's safe and all that, but it would be really hard to do a Zoom interview for me when sometimes you just read a lot of other things rather than just their words, like what they're wearing or how they answer your questions, or whether you get eye contact, or whether it's there's a lot of other factors that are really hard if it were to be done on Zoom for me. But again, I come back to my first point, and that is that we wouldn't want anyone to ever have a problem with the Zoom program and feel like they missed their opportunity because of a technical or an electronic error, whether it be their fault or not.
I'd hope as a group we'd realize that that's the nature of our life anymore, and we just got to work with it. And it's not their fault if we have a technical issue, because some of us aren't technically inclined, and
And I think Councilman Ivy, that those that are in that next round are going to make every effort to come.
I think you're going to find all
Because
the
they're gonna
applicants
wanna
on the position
bring
like
their
this.
best foot
They're
forward
going
anyway,
to fly
so.
in.
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't think you're going to find anyone not willing to come, even if they have to sit across the room with us to do an in-person interview.
We just take their temperature, right? And we're good.
Here we go.
Are you comfortable with that format? That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you all meet. And then I wanted to go through these suggested questions. And if there's anything that you're uncomfortable with, we can change those. Folks, we have, we do have a little over a week. We're still taking applications. So, and then before we even get together, we can put our heads together. And because I would like that to initiate through HR, this letter being sent out, not us, as we move forward. So that would be another reason to have a little discussion tonight if there's no other additional
Mayor,
questions
just one
for
quick
Ruth.
question. Will the candidates each have these questions in advance?
These 5 or 6 or whatever they are,
They will
First
have
round,
each one of them will
advance so
get
they can
mailed
answer
to
them.
them, and then
we will
we expect them
email.
to come back within a week or 10
I think
days,
there's
whatever it
got-
is.
Not 10 days. I think we send it out in 3 days to answer 5 questions is plenty of time.
Okay.
So I think we email that out to them. I'll give them a time frame of when it needs to be back. When they all come back, then I'll make copies for all of you guys to have those. You can marry them up with those applications and take whatever time you need to go through and start your screening process.
So a follow-up question then in round 2, when they're in person, will they have the round 2 questions in advance?
No,
No.
Those are
Those
ones
will
that will
be-
be asked at the time. Okay.
And that's important, I think, to just so they can see how they can think on their feet.
Me too.
The only question, and I brought up to Ruth, and we might disagree, but the question number 5 about the pay range, I understand where Ruth's coming from on it. I just don't want us to get in our head. I'm not worried. We have our pay range, and if they can stay within it, but I just want to make sure that number doesn't get stuck in our heads moving forward. I don't want that to be arguing over a few dollars to get the right person to make the city a better place.
I agree, but I think it does have some purpose there. I mean, if we're just not even on the same planet, then that's a good.
exactly. That
might be a
the
good-
purpose of that is, again, it's like I was telling Councilman Coates, is that it doesn't mean they're eliminated if they shoot out of the ballpark range. I mean, if they come in and say, I'm only prepared to work for 160,000 and we're not prepared to pay 160,000, it doesn't mean that you eliminate them right then, but you can. You can. So that's when you would look at the application and the responses to say, maybe they're not as strong as what they're asking for. Maybe they're absolutely knock your socks off with that application. You say, well, we still want to move forward with them and consider them. But that doesn't mean that you're going to move them all the way through.
But you'd hate to get to the very end and find that out to say,
Exactly.
here's a candidate that you're maybe willing to take a risk on or give a little, a chance to, and then find out that you're going to have to pay twice as much.
And you're not prepared to do that. So I have always said, like, why drive the BMW if you can't afford it?
Well, and Doug, I like that because even in my business, I hire people and I'll ask, what would you expect to be paid for this position? And surprisingly, I often have a higher number in my head and then what they come back and say they would. So
Well, I agree. I just don't see it as a round in the first round. But
And
but
some,
are we
I gotta
maybe just
def-
filtering somebody who has unrealistic expectations?
you'll find some of the
So that's a good
applications-
point, Craig. Is this a better second round question or is this a better first
my only
round
thing.
filter?
And the only reason why I bring it up is just my experience with writing RFPs for projects is that sometimes if you write in a number, even though they say the number doesn't matter, it always seems to matter.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm just saying, I don't want, when I see it, as long as they're within the range or even close, a little bit higher, I'm looking at it like, okay, there's a reason maybe it's a little bit higher, but for their qualifications or something, but I just don't want to get stuck in our minds. But you said 105 was good enough for you, but now you're asking for 120. Like that's what I don't want to get stuck in. What changed in the
Well,
past 2
Say,
weeks?
say that. Explain that more, Craig. I want to understand better what you're saying.
So what I'm saying is, what if they put down so that it make them look better? Hey, it's worth 105. I can do this job for 105, but then when it gets down to the last round, they're like, oh, I was just, that was just to get me through, and I'm really looking for.
I need 120
I
or
need
whatever.
120, 125, or else I can't make this work. And theoretically, if it's within a range, we don't care. But I don't know. I just
You're going to find negotiating at the end of the day anyway.
all right. Well, you got more experience. I just that was the one that made me
Ruth.
nervous.
I guess.
Councilman, maybe could we state it like this? Within the posted pay range, are you comfortable with that?
We could do that.
Then that could be a yes or a no.
A lot of them, you're
Yeah.
going to find two on your
Or
response.
something
Yeah.
of that nature.
Yeah, I like that.
Some of them will say, I'm already making this and I'd like to come in at that same
Sure.
rate. Or some of them may also, you're going to find a lot of them will say, whatever you're willing to pay me is what I'll. work
Maybe an
for."
if not, please explain.
Yeah, maybe say, and maybe I'm thinking way too much into this, but I'm just,
Well,
I'm just wondering if you can say, you know, is the current pay range within acceptability, and if not, explain your reasoning.
Yeah, something like that.
I know when I hire the people that work with me in my little business, I ask that question right up front because it really tells a lot about maybe their expectations and what maybe your expectations are. I mean, this is certainly different than the employees I hire, but I'd like to get that question asked more at the front to be able to determine whether or not it's something that can be moved forward or not, because that's why people work, is for pay and benefits. And, if
And are we
that's-
getting what we're paying for?
well, that's the main reason that people work, is for pay. And that should be one of the major first and main things that we discuss. Now, I don't want it to exclude, but I certainly think that it's something that would help clarify maybe a little better the different applicants and what their motivations and what they are looking at, because this may not work.
You've already posted a range, so you've already kind of given them the answer. The worst thing you can do with a pay is to have some number magically in the back of your head where you're going to exclude people. And I think the biggest thing is we're going to need to all be grown-ups about it and be responsible with that, and not disqualify people, because what we really want is experience.
Exactly. As I said, if you find someone that's coming in with a 160,000 number in their head and they knock your socks off, you might want to consider to negotiate with them somewhat. So, you know, you may have some that come in at 160 and are so arrogant that you say, oh no.
Well, I personally feel that these folks that are bringing in their applications are wanting to come into our community because of what they've heard, what they've read about, and what they've seen. And so I think it's going to be a moot point, that number 5. Personally, I think we need to say something, maybe not to that point, but I really firmly believe we're going to have those quality. We're going to have a hard time because we're going to have such quality
Tell me one
applications.
down to the cents.
Hey, what's the purpose of question 1?
On
Just-
that one?
A question about our community and the city.
What do you specifically know about Washington City and our community? Just out of
I want to
what's
see, have they done their research? Do they know anything about Washington? Are they just applying for a position? Are they just looking to relocate and will take any job? Or have they really done their homework and looked up population, looked up culture, looked up what development we have? What do you know? I mean, are you just throwing in an application that you've had and you're just updating it? Or have you really put some effort into knowing our city?
You're going to get a lot of fluff out of that,
And you might.
I hope we get something creative.
but you really probably ought to hire somebody who can at least say something nice about your city.
I think we'll be able to negotiate the fluff.
Something
'cause
about
I
our
think we know.
trails or our
And if-
roads or
and
we
if-
know.
And if not, at
The
least they'll
names.
learn something about our city. And
And also, council, the reason that I think I asked Ruth to send these out to you, we may want to tweak those questions also. We have time to do that. These are the questions that Ruth had and we have talked about, but it's not etched in stone. These aren't etched in stone. You can take a day or two and think about those, and we can bounce it off each other. We don't need to have another meeting like this, but we can bounce them off each other and if there's
Just let
any
me
that-
know, remove which
Right.
one and add which one, or are we good with what we have, or
Well, and-
just give me your input.
And Mayor, to answer your question, I really like the process. And I like the fact that it's the way that HR has been doing it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, from my standpoint, I support the process. I like these questions. Yeah, we could tweak them, but I'm not sure we're going to come up with something better, or I'm fine to wait a few days if people have thoughts, but
Just
I like
keep
the
in,
process. I like the questions.
and keep in mind, when you hit your round 3, you can ask the questions you want.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
Out
a
of the
critical.
air, some additional questions in round 3.
like I said, I like the rest of the questions. As long as we reword the number 5 just a little bit, I think we're golden from my standpoint for the first round.
Councilman Ward, are you okay with those?
While he's thinking, I probably would want to maybe customize the round 2 questions a little
Absolutely,
more.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
the round 1 questions,
And I would like to, I've got, I spent half the day today working on the district manager position for the solid waste, and they had some good questions, and I'd like to just get with Ruth and see which ones might work. Cause we didn't use them all, but we used, like, I got them here, there's 11 questions and we asked 5, and that's all we asked in the second round. But we were consistent on the same questions, those 5.
And I think that's important that we're consistent
Right.
on that. In fact, I wonder if we ought to even just share a doc with a list of multiple questions and maybe come up with 5 or 6 that we're going to ask each candidate in that second round. And then we can also make sure that we're not asking the same thing, that we're broad and that everybody feels like they have at least one question that they really want to ask.
What we can have their councilman is that list, and that morning or whenever we start the interview process. Okay, Councilman Coach, you take number 1.
Yep.
Ivy, you take 2. I'll take 3. That way, if there's 10 questions, then we each take 2 questions, and then that allows, while you're asking your question, us to observe the candidate, because there's a lot you can learn as you watch, so that I'm not asking all the questions, because I don't get the opportunity then to really check that person out. And so
Yeah.
I think and then that's how we've done it in the
Just let's
past.
get the questions so that we can put everything together
Right.
in advance. So we have everything, how you guys want, make sure we have the questions that you want.
Can you, I mean, I'd love to see those questions.
Yeah.
Those,
I'll just like get them.
can Ruth maybe put together just a doc and share those, and we can kind of
Maybe
narrow
you guys
them
can
down?
Email
add the ones that you all want, and then maybe come together at the end of the day and maybe highlight, I like 1, 2, and 3, and I like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then take a vote on which ones you like to keep.
Mayor, it might be even a good idea with those to maybe have a Google share doc that we could all put questions in, and then we could look for all of them and see what, because you might have a question, but we all come from varied backgrounds, and there might be a question just sitting there that everyone would say, wow, that's a good question. Let's put it in. But I think if we each put in like 5 questions and then kind of drill them down, is that what you're thinking, Mayor? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the reason for the second doc is just to start stimulating your thought processes. These aren't hard and fast questions. Please don't. I hope you didn't take it that way. I want you to.
Scroll. Just slide to the left. That's the round 2.
Yeah, I got it.
So, Mayor, that's kind of the process. It sounds, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but it sounds like we're all,
In agreement.
with following the process that's established and kind of dialing in on the specific questions. Is part of tonight to talk about qualities we're looking for too, or is it primarily just process?
Just process. Just process.
Right.
So you talked about a checkoff list for deciding on the second round of applicants. You're going to produce that list, and we can kind of maybe talk through that list after you've
As
initially
far as
produced that.
narrowing them down.
Well, you mentioned a scoring list, 1 through 5.
Yeah. So what you'll want to do is we'll have, each applicant will have a score sheet. And you can now just do like your total scores, and then just go through and we just kind of do it like on the whiteboard. You write down the applicant's name, put the scores up for each one, and your top 2 or 3 are your highest scores, or your next one's moving around to the next round. Not necessarily always is it that way, because you can have some applicants that interview very well and may not be they may have scored very well, but may not be your top applicant. And so at that point, that's where you would want to probably look at those total scores and say, is this my top 6, or is there someone else I want to pull in because they did a very good job, but maybe didn't score quite as high?
So, and I appreciate that. And I probably will actually have some of my own criteria that I'll keep on my own score. But I would like to ask you to generate that, and maybe in enough time that we can maybe discuss it and have maybe some back and forth on it. 2, I would like you to actually keep score
Okay.
from your position on those, and then share that with us. And then we can I'd like to see that for myself, because I'd like to see your score as well as the score I come up with, and then as we go through that section.
So council, are you asking Ruth to join us in the interview process then?
I think
I kind of assume she would be, but
I like seeing your opinion.
Okay.
I like the opinion. I'm not saying as part of the, just to hear your opinion. I think it's
Yeah,
great.
I-
And then the
Well,
decision
it's,
still
it's
made
our,
by the,
it's our call. So
It's-
we
but
can
it's-
invite her, we can not invite her. So
well, I think we should invite her where she feels comfortable. If there's, I'm just telling you the experience I had today. The HR for the county said, hey, we have some people that are applying that are within the city, so I'm not going to attend these meetings. But he gave his input on he scored that as well.
I would like Ruth in with I think that that's her job. She has insight into this that, I mean, it's what she does every day. She has great experience. And I think that by her being there and maybe even having a score sheet might help us to see something or realize something. But I don't even know that you'd need to. Councilman, you saying that she potentially should disqualify herself if somebody from the city
If she feels like it. I don't want her to feel in a position where she doesn't want to.
I
That's
wouldn't-
all I'm saying is that I think it's more of a fact. If you don't feel comfortable, then I think we'd leave that up to you. I'm okay with you being in the interview process.
I am too, all of them.
none. In an effort to be fair, you wouldn't be uncomfortable being in through the whole process, would you? I wouldn't want to see you in and out.
She better not be. It's her job.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see you. I wouldn't want to see you hand me a score sheet on one person and then decide you can't on another. I mean, if you got sick or something,
I don't have
fell
any
under a
problem.
bus or something, that might.
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay.
Like I said, I think that ultimately is your decisions. And so I can just give you more the character, behavior, what my observations are, things like that. But then leave it up to you to make your decisions.
See, and I like those because sometimes the HR gets to see things that we don't get to see.
I agree. That this is just a unique perspective, and I'd like to get that as much as we can.
In fact, I wish I'd have had her on several hires that I've made over the years.
and to your other point, Councilman Staley, I wasn't quite ready, I think, for us to talk about the qualities or the qualifications.
I am totally okay with that. I just, I didn't know exactly what the scope was, so I'm fine with that.
I was ready just more for format and that, and then because we're all going to have our own ideas and probably thought processes of who we're all looking for. Hopefully at some point in this rodeo, we can find somebody we really like.
So Mayor, can we look at calendar and kind of get an idea of what days we'll be interviewing? And because I know there's some gentlemen that probably needs to make arrangements for work or just to
Yeah.
kind of get an idea of what we're looking at, assuming that we
This
know
was
the
my
numbers.
thinking, and Ruth, as you and I visited, the 28th is the last day of applications. Ruth would be sending out these 5 questions on the 31st.
And we would probably want to give maybe a 3-day. So,
Three-
I'm
so
thinking, was that
Back
about
on the 3rd or the
second,
4th.
I think give them the week.
Answer
Well, it
5
depends on where they're from, if we're,
No, I'm just saying, I mean, I'm just looking from my experience. You know, you're busy in your day life and you think, hey, I have the time on the weekend to write it up. I'm just saying if we can have it back by the 7th, which is Labor Day, but I don't know.
but then for you gentlemen, your time work schedule, do you want to, the 10th would be the 9th would be our Wednesday workshop council. So would we start interviewing the 10th and the 11th or just the 10th? Or can you arrange work to have that
Okay, are you talking right after their responses are back on the 7th,
on
right?
the 7th?
Won't be interviewing on the 9th or 10th
So we need to decide on a
because you're going to have to give
We
at
need to
least
s-
a week notice
yeah.
for traveling.
Okay.
we need to decide
And we
if they're
need-
going to how we're going to actually make that first round exclusions. Are we going to meet together? Or are we going to just each do our own homework
I think we
and
need-
submit and vote on those?
Have to
Let's-
meet.
We're going to
on
have to
that.
meet. Yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to need to meet council.
Now, that's a closed meeting, right? We're because it's an interview kind of a thing.
Just to discuss individuals and the character of individuals.
That's a
Denise, are you out there?
We actually don't have anyone that we're talking about.
We are.
could that be a closed session or does that need to be a public?
Jeff's sitting here in my office and he said for a city manager.
Well, yeah, wait. Yeah, let me see if I can get on here. Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
it's Brian.
Hang on.
What did we say?
That was Greek to us. What did you said?
We're on two. Yeah, let me walk out in the hallway. We're getting feedback. Hang on.
Just walk down
Just
here.
come down here.
Hear me now?
Jeff, just come down
Are
here.
you here?
How about that?
No, come downstairs.
Just come downstairs.
Come down to can you come down
Okay.
to the council room?
Yeah, because it is for city manager. We don't have the same restrictions we'd have for city council
Okay.
members. So I'll be right there. Thanks, Denise.
Case in point on the electronics.
You're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's just,
I mean, a good candidate
it's
who's
gonna-
serious about this job,
it's gonna
if
happen.
they're not very comfortable with their electronics, they'll practice and they'll find people. I mean, that's honestly the kind of candidate I want to hire. If they're fumbling and dropping it on the floor, I'm not going to feel like
What's this?
I'm not going to feel like they've
What
put
button
much.
you push?
That's right. Exactly. Come show me.
So my apologies. We had feedback going when both Denise and I had our computers open. So what we don't want to do is this is just such an odd time because we're looking at filling a vacated city council seat at the same time we're doing a city manager. So two pretty important things for the city. City council to fill that seat by state law, they have made it so that there cannot be executive sessions for interview, which they have to make that exception by state law because that would not tend to be the case for city manager. You're still able to interview for such things as, character. I mean, that's the reason you have executive meetings, to discuss character, what you feel about someone. Those would be okay to be done in an executive meeting. And quite frankly, if you had less than 3 of you, it wouldn't matter anyway.
Yeah, but we're going to want to have everybody.
That's not something, no matter what the subject was, you would have to have open.
Right.
So
So the first round, we can schedule an executive meeting, go through all the applicants' questions, review them and score them and make a determination on how many move through to the second round. And we can do that as an executive closed session meeting.
And because you're talking about having 3 or more of you elected at the same time.
The whole council, including Councilman Coates
Those could be done as executive.
and everybody else.
wow.
So the answer is yes.
The answer is
That's all I
yes.
wanted to
So
know. The answer is yes.
So I'm proposing the 17th we do that because it's not a council week. Because if we're going to have 50, we have to review. That's a lot of time we need on our home time with all our other duties to get through those 50 applicants and make sure they're right. If we get them back on the 7th and then probably get them to us by the 8th, Ruth, is that right?
You know what? Let me just ask, just to clarify. You've said that the last day it closes on the 28th. You send out the questions on the 31st. What is the typical time that you would do? Is a week kind of what you're thinking, or?
Usually because some of these
Okay.
people may have to make flight arrangements or they may be driving out. So, the 5-day week is what I'm looking at.
Well, this is
On
just the
Monday.
first round where they
Yeah.
would email them back. So you want them back
Emailing
within a
back,
week.
I think 3 days is good. But if
Okay.
you want to go a week, I
I
think
know
a week
that's-
is
that's
fine.
fine.
I actually like having a little bit of a time crunch, and I don't want them to have too much time to write more than I want to read.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too.
So but I realize that is that Labor Day weekend, but you know what? City managers have to work on Labor Day
Yes, they
weekend.
do.
So I don't think I'll be too sensitive to.
Well, we're saying it'd
Do
be
you
back
want
by
to
the
go to the
4th.
to the 7th then, or
No, we're saying go earlier, the 4th. If that's the
4th.
consensus, that's
By Friday the 4th.
by Friday the 4th. But does that give you time to get stuff put out and get it ready to us by the end of the day on the 8th?
So let's see. The 4th is what day of the week?
It's
It's
Friday.
Friday.
So sometime probably Monday the 7th or Tuesday the 8th, then you could send those.
probably
With
the 8th.
Monday's the Labor
responses
Day.
out.
Monday's Labor
Out.
Day.
Then
Oh,
you'll
yeah.
have all of the applicants, you'll have
Okay.
everything. you
So
need.
on the 9/8, you would send those out, and then we would have a certain amount of time to review those before we meet again.
So I'm thinking it's probably what day is the 8th on?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So it's probably going to take you the rest of that week.
That's why I was thinking the
All
following
that.
week. So I was thinking either the 15th or 17th.
Yeah, I would think, I mean, to go through that many applicants and questions, I think to thoroughly go through, you're going to take,
Yeah, more time then, I think.
I'm
would be
thinking you're
great.
looking more at that
Yeah.
15th or whatever that,
I propose the 17th just to give us those days.
or even the 18th. So you're to a Friday and then you've got the weekend to.
Well, but that means we got to make a decision.
So-
We have to have a meeting on a Friday, which we usually try not to do.
Why are we meeting on the 16th? Why are we doing, why not Wednesday?
Oh,
That's council meeting.
That's planning commission that day. So I was just
Isn't
thinking
it?
I didn't want to
Oh,
interrupt.
Oh, no,
Council's gonna be on the
that's planning
9th
commission,
and
that's right.
23rd.
Well, that's right.
I
Okay.
have youth council on the 16th also.
Okay. Is there a difference between the 15th and the 17th? Not that I really
15th's
care.
good.
Just 2 more
Not that I
days.
really care.
One of them's a Tuesday.
So can we leave that just tentative and see how many? I mean, I'm good with either. I just was thinking might help to have additional 2 days if we have 50 things to read.
Guys,
Yeah,
2
but I
days
want to
for
put
the-
you all under the gun too. If we're going to put the applicants under the gun, let's put us under the gun.
I'm under the
too.
gun right now. Doug's just pointing it at me all night.
Second round for the second round.
It doesn't matter. Whatever works for
So
everyone's schedule.
this would be the day that we meet together.
Yeah.
I have a lot of flexibility with my schedule. So
Well, I was just
15th,
gonna say,
17th, I'm okay with
I
either.
don't have a big deal with either of those. So if somebody has an opinion, say it. Otherwise, let's do it. I'd be, 15th. Let's do it.
Let's do it the 15th.
So that's
That's the
narrowing of the applications
Right.
will be on the 15th.
And so that'll be the first day.
Right.
that we-
Do you want to start in the morning? Can you take the day off?
Can we do a half day?
Can we do it at night?
No, can we start at like noon? Just
I'm flexible, so
Honestly, I'd like to see us show up to that meeting pretty well. pretty
Prepared
well
with your top
with your
handful.
top picks, the groups, so I've got my list of people who I've already disqualified. I've got my list of people I'm going to feel bad if they don't come through to me. And then we kind of go through it. So then you're focusing in on, okay, why is there a difference? And if each one of us come with our, top 16 candidates and none of them match, then we're gonna have to really get together and think. And that way, if we have Tuesday, then we can spill it over into Thursday
Good idea.
to bring that back down. But I'm thinking, I would like to see that be an evening meeting, starting around 4.
How many hours would you expect?
And just pound down through it.
How many
I
hours?
also don't want to rush it.
You're
Why
gonna
don't
be a
either?
good
That way-
team.
I want to have
if
time
we-
to just
I think
really
that-
discuss it and vet it.
If we have issues or we have concerns,
well,
that gives you Wednesday to, make some
I don't
phone
think
calls
it
to
will
each
be
other,
that
and
as
Thursday-
difficult as you think.
I
If
don't
you were
either.
to say each of you have your top 15
Yep.
and you put, okay, who's your number 15 and you write them on the board. Now, who are your
Yeah.
15? And you tally off the same ones. Well, you may have 1 or 2 left over or 1 or 2 left
You could
over.
do that
Well,
before
now
the
you guys
meeting.
each have 4 or 5 maybe that are all
Yeah.
different that you can all talk about those 4 or 5 that are left over. Do I want to throw them in or do I not?
It's
So I
like
don't
the
think you're gonna have-
NCAA selection. It's
Selection
who's on the
committee.
bubble.
Well,
It's like,
yeah.
do we let BYU in this year?
I mean, if you've got
Play-in game.
if you've got 87 candidates that are
push it
all in
a
the
little
bubble,
further.
then you have a really long meeting. But if it's just
It's a handful.
I-
15.
one of us
I
has
agree.
2 extra people, you just pass them through. Let's hear them talk.
no, I
I would
agree with
err on that as well, Councilman.
So should we
Because-
just start at 4:00 on the 15th?
Okay.
Make
what
that
it is?
work.
But I'd like to see the paperwork out to us in sufficient, or the responses out to us in a sufficient amount of time, and we all agree to come with our top 15. And I'd actually like to see those top 15 in before then, so we can give them to somebody who can put them on a spreadsheet and itemize them out, and we can see which ones don't match.
See, and I think we should just bring them that day. I really do. Just bring
I
them and
can-
say these are my 15. We can talk about it real.
And we can have somebody with IT make a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We'll type them in as we go, and we can bring them then and just put them all in when we're together.
Yeah.
That's all I think too.
Yeah.
So let me ask.
I agree.
I think you're gonna see folks like, that are clearly good enough to meet the art.
I think so too. I think the cream will just rise kind of.
So I would ask Ruth on references and those kind of things. What would your recommendation be to us as a council moving forward with when we go do that due diligence? Is it right now and just start going at it, or?
I would wait till you get to your final 2 or 3 applicants.
Okay.
When you narrow it down to where you're now making a selection, that's when we will dig real deep into the background stuff.
So that was a good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So describe to me that process. Is that something that you would typically expect for us to task you with, digging into those, and we have
It's been kind of a 2-part. So normally I will go through all the references on their application.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may know some of the applicants.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have connections with somebody that's a reference on their applications, and you guys can call and ask them what you know.
Okay.
Bring that to the table on what you may know, and then I bring to the table my findings of what I know, and then you guys can go lunch and make a decision.
So round 1, 8:31 email questions, 9:04 email questions due, 9:15, 4 p.m. We're meeting to just kind of narrow the applicants down to our onto who's going to round 2. So let's go through round 2. They'll need time to round 2 are in-person interviews.
Yeah, I think we should just hold off on deciding those dates until we go through round 1. Is that, were you looking for a date?
I don't mind seeing them put out.
It's
there,
just
but
for
let's-
convenience.
Structure. I
Are you thinking the week after?
I wouldn't mind
I'm
seeing them
not
out
thinking
there.
anything other than I like the structure of
Yeah.
knowing kind of where we're.
I agree, but let's agree to be flexible,
Mm-hmm.
because we may get into this and find that we've got to change some things. But it wouldn't hurt my feelings to have.
I just don't want to rush it. I want
Right.
to get the right person is my only concern. So I don't want to say, hey, by this date, we're going to have a decision.
I'm not looking to rush it. I'm just looking to have a format to where I kind of have in my head knowing where we're going with each round.
Well, and we need to know the dates too, so that we can schedule, because we do have lives. Well, some of you have lives. I don't really, but you guys have lives outside of this. So it may help to.
Not known well, from out of the area, they're gonna be some high quality ones that might take a little more time to figure out why.
So Councilman Staley, are you thinking after this to set up the first interviews the following week? Is that your thinking, or were you thinking 2 weeks?
Either, whatever the consensus is here, but I could go with either of those. I'm not, like I said, I don't want to rush the process. I definitely want to be as thorough and as we need to be, but
The length
I-
of round 2 seems like a really big unknown to me,
Yeah.
because we haven't even really decided on how many candidates to pass through from round 1 to round 2.
And we might have multiple days of interviews.
Right.
Yeah.
it would be
So
nice to
start
at least
counting
kind of
that.
say this week, these days are possible interview days. And let's say we have 15. I don't have any idea what the number is going to be, but are they 20-minute interviews? Are they 30-minute interviews? Where do they take place? But if we have a few day parameter where those interviews could take place, that's what I'd like to at least
You
know.
meet in just the conference room. That's where
Right,
we
we'd
hold
be in the
them,
conference room.
And usually we give a 30-minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some go a little longer, some maybe a little shorter, but
What time frame would you recommend for the second round? Those
depends on
interviews?
how many you want to do a day. I mean, there's been times we've gone from 8 to 8. There's been times when we've just done morning or an afternoon and spread it over 2 days.
And how many interviews are you
days.
typically doing for, 15? Is that high or low or about average?
Done a dozen to 15 before,
Yeah.
but it's a long day doing that too. And I think that, if you really want to have a fresh mind on each applicant, you might want to do it over a couple of days. If you have 15, I think easily doable to be 8 to 10 in a day if you wanted to. But you're going to be an all-day process.
So if we narrow down those applicants on September 15th, what would be a reasonable date then to have them back for round two in-person interviews?
Very likely that
22nd sounds good.
23rd to 25th. That's it. Down there in the convention.
It's
That's going to be virtual.
virtual.
Yeah.
That's still long and participated in. Plus, may not help, but the international city managers meetings are going on that same week. Which, you know, if they're active and good in what they do as city managers, they probably
Might be involved.
schedule to be going to that or participating anyway.
Should we say the 29th then?
They're on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
The following week, 2 weeks, should be the 29th.
I like that, actually. I'm happy with the 29th. And possibly the 30th, depending on the
Okay.
narrowing.
Yeah, let's plan that.
Hey, I tried to get a mic over there, but I just made a mess.
We're thinking that the 29th is a all-day deal, starting
I think we ought to plan on that.
4:30 in the morning.
No,
So
let's go 4:32 in the morning.
8:39, whatever your preference is.
I think we meet at
September
8
29th.
o'clock and then get
8
going.
o'clock.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Tuesday.
You could go 8
September
o'clock
29th.
and then 8:30 start the interview
Yeah.
so that you've got 30 minutes to
At,
kind of
no,
discuss
at 8
process.
I like
Maybe
that.
Joe can-
I like
8
discussing
a.m.
it just for a few
Take
minutes
time
and
off,
get,
go all day that day.
8 a.m.
Possibly.
8
next
a.m.
week. We've narrowed down to.
You're buying.
I'm buying. Take
yeah, all day that day.
Okay. Just put in for all day.
And you'll, Denise, you'll put these in our calendars.
Hey,
Okay.
So speaking of not rushing this, I'm struggling with this thought because I want the deadline to remain where it's at, but it's almost right after the deadline is reached for turning in the applications. Can we just change that posting to include until hired?
So don't close it.
Right. Because honestly, if I don't have a good handful of really good applicants to stress over and to struggle with trying to figure out which one's the best, I'm going to be disappointed.
We would just repost that.
I think
We can't, you could change that, but then you've
Just
got to have it
repost it the next day until hired.
perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Open until filled. Yeah. Because I don't want to, this first round, I think these applicants deserve to be passed through the first round, but at a certain point, if we get out there and, you've only got
Don't feel right.
You've only
you
got
don't have to
one
make
good
an offer.
person who applied. You start thinking maybe we need to advertise this differently. Maybe the timing was bad, and just
Yeah, we can do that.
This is a profession that's really tight. They will
I
have
agree.
passed this information
I agree.
along really quick. So unless it's somebody outside of their circles, somebody new or somebody from the region that aren't catching these or don't realize, what a jewel it is, what Washington City is for a jewel for this profession, if they're outside of the area. Once it's known, the good people will be on, I think.
so. Is there any type of I can't even say a word here. Can we contact some of these people? Is there any part in the process where we should not contact people? Or is there maybe help us to understand any of the ramifications of? I think you're right. I think we should all be thinking about calling and checking on their background once it's narrowed down quite a bit. But and I'm guessing more information we can get, the better. As far as
I don't know that I'd reach out to the applicant and ask individual questions.
well, I'm going to guess that some of these applicants we're going to know. So
I would do
want
that
I want
as more
kind of
of
a
a
legal and
group.
human resource take on things that council should avoid or not do?
Councilman Ward, I would suggest look at their Facebook. You'll find out everything you need to know.
Well, and maybe it's a question that we're doing follow-up questions and looking into our applicants, or we're not getting the applicants we want, because I've always
No,
been.
no, no. This is a totally separate question.
Right.
This is just in the interview process is from legal and from HR, your recommendations on anything that council should avoid or do or not do.
Should we
Just
not,
looking for your
should we not talk to
professional.
the applicant outside of the meetings we have?
Well, I think that ought to be up to you. I think that ought to be you guys talking to each other. That's really a management issue with you elected officials. If we're not getting the people applying
I think you're still on the wrong topic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm on the topic
No,
with
I'm-
you. I understand.
for contacting them, I still think it's up to you guys
Not,
whether you
not
reach out.
contacting Jeff. Setting aside contacting, I'm talking about the interview process and just interactions with the people who have already applied.
Can a council member call someone over in St. George City and say, "You applied for this job"?
No, I get it. I still think that's,
No,
Here's
oh. I still think that's an issue of the elected officials, how comfortable you guys are with each other. If the more contacts you make individually and don't know with each other, it starts to seem like it might not be appropriate. If you guys have no issues with each other doing it, and then you share that information, that's not problematic.
And I
But
think that's why I like the process. I like this to be a formal process. I like there to be dates and a system. I don't think it's right for council members to unilaterally go out and interview any applicants. I mean, I think at that round 3, I like the idea of really checking and double checking references.
yeah.
Right. But
Yeah, for one,
I think we stick
And
to
I
the
think
process.
you can ask any questions you want, but I think you should ask them as a group, as an interviewing board.
because this is
They are
a body
interviewing.
decision. It's not
Well, it's an interviewing process
not a
too.
somebody. It's a council body.
If you can
Mayor.
ask any question you want, and someone may or not like it, but you are welcome to ask any question you want. But I would make it open so that everyone is on the same page, and maybe it's an interested question they would like the answer on
What
as
do we
well.
do after the in-person interviews? Then what's next? Just
That's where I think that's your round 3. So you have your first round. I think you go on to your next round where now you're saying I have 2 or 3 applicants left. Now what?
is that
now,
been your experience, Mayor, to have like 2 or 3 or 5 or just
2 or 3. From what I've seen and been involved with, the cream comes to the top, and usually it's 2 or 3. You know, if it's 5, then we're not comfortable with who's there.
And
Okay.
honestly, as far as that next part of the process, I personally would like the experience of round 1 and 2 to help shape what I want to see as far as
Correct.
round 3.
Right.
yes.
I think
And
we're
that's
gonna-
typically what will happen.
We're going to be different people by the end of this and have a little more.
tell me more.
Customized
I'm not sure I
approach.
totally understand what you're saying, Councilman, and I want to.
Well, so I'm just saying, we're going to see a bunch of candidates. They're going to influence us and change us a little bit. I would like to withhold our decision on what we do for round 3 to qualify them until after round 1 and 2. And then we can kind of come back together and say, okay, here's the people we like. What do I want to do to give each person a fair shake to rise and be the person that we pick. Just because I really think that the process will kind of change us and shape us a little bit.
You'll find too, based upon your notes that you've taken through round 1 and round 2, that when you get to round 3, you've got some specific questions
Right.
for that applicant, that each
Yeah.
one of you may have different questions you want to ask that applicant.
And different questions for different applicants.
Yes.
I even had this idea. I don't know, maybe I'm just being too outside the box, but I thought it would be interesting to drive around our community and just talk roads and talk power. I don't know if that's an appropriate interview,
I think it
but
totally
I just
As-
thought,
as we
how
get down
do
to
you
the top-
respond to what you see here? And
I would expect them to drive around and them to bring what they see and be preemptive in solutions. And that would be impressive. Ruth, can I jump to the end? Because I've tried to find the answers to this and I don't know them. So once we get to the very end of this process and we've all got in our minds who we would like to be the city manager, would you talk to, or Mayor, maybe that's you. I'm sorry.
No, that's HR, because we would turn it over to her to make the offer and get the paperwork
Okay,
rolling.
what-
Well, but also
Just a
legal,
little bit
right?
back
'Cause this
from
will be
that
a
was-
contract.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And write up
legal
the
will be-
contract,
right.
and we will be directly involved with that.
Right, but I meant not quite to the very end then, just back a little bit. So when the council gets together and the mayor and we decide on persons, I mean, is it a nomination process and a vote? Is it secret ballot? Is it?
You guys are just selecting. You can sit around and hash it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, because I was thinking it was to the death.
That's in an executive closed session.
That may be.
That's where you really want to be able to be open with each other and go, yeah, I know, but you guys didn't see how we reacted to
Yeah.
Sullivan Park when we went out there. This is reflective of time. That's when you start giving gut feel to each other also for, I don't know, because I think you're going to find 2 or 3 are going to be there to see if it helps their negotiations for their current job. And they may not even have an interest in it. I think talking with each other at that point, as open as you want to be, is best.
You know, having
Public.
known that, then I would feel very comfortable in letting the mayor kind of lay out what process he would like to see at the very end. If that's, I mean, that's just my own thought, that you can kind of, you've been here before, you've done this, and you can kind of lay out the process and say, this is what I'd like to see now that we've kind of got it narrowed down to who we would like. And I think that would be a fair and
No pressure.
no pressure at all, Mayor.
All
There's no
on-
pressure as a mayor. Come on.
Did he just say, come on, man? Was that a Joe Biden impression?
No, I'm from the 70s. I have deep roots in the 70s, so I get that once in a while.
I kind of been trying to jot stuff down here and look through this. I personally think we should be more specific with our round 1 questions. I'd like to see them be much more really focused on who we are and what we are as a city. I mean, taking a look at like our real challenges here. There are cities in Utah that their biggest challenge is they're shrinking. That's not our problem. But I'd like to see that round 1. I'd like to see these candidates have a shot at like a growth as a big challenge to that. We also we're unique in some ways. We have a power department here. Taking a look at how they handle budgets, working with an executive level director team, how they're dealing with those kind of people and things. I'd really like to see them take a real stab at some hard questions that are specific to Washington City.
Councilman Ward, are you saying the one that we mail out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that
do you
first
want
round.
to send over some additional thoughts
Sure.
on what you want?
Yeah. I just
Well,
think.
I actually would prefer those questions to be shared
Yeah.
with
I mean,
everyone. I like where you're going there. I think you're on a good thought process. I think some of these questions can be combined, you know, growth and providing power within that and budgeting with growing. I think you can incorporate a few different things, but I don't want to overwhelm them with questions. I think we probably ought to limit it to 5 or 6.
Agreed.
But try to maybe broaden the brush.
I don't want to overwhelm us with answers either. You know what I mean?
But I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with some of these. I like number 1. I don't know.
I like 3. And I like 4, but yeah, I mean, 1's a nice one, but like you said,
We could share a doc for the next couple of days and decide if that's even legal. Is that legal to share a doc to
Yeah. We should.
formulate questions?
Yeah. I don't-
Doesn't have to
I
be
don't
like
see
an
any
open
reason-
meeting thing.
I guess if it's not, we could literally make the dock open to the public.
You know, I think question number 1, what it does is right off the bat, we're establishing that our culture and history is important. And I like the question because it's broad and I think we can learn a lot from them talking and us not. allowing them to really just delve into how they want to answer. I have no problem with mixing them up, changing some wording, but I'm all about listening to what they're saying.
Do we maybe add a question? Do we maybe put the pay range thing as kind of a postscript and ask a question to number 5? And, you know, in regards to power, budgets, executive level leadership, you know, what are some of the challenges that you see if we could face, and how would you
You could
address them?
take-
And then give them some latitude to
You could
address.
take the pay rate thing and just put a yes and no, explain why, explain for no.
But maybe
Yeah.
put in a question in place of that allows some freedom to answer and address some of those issues.
Trying to get my 2 documents open. I gotta try and.
Here, you can look at this.
Yeah, oh, thank you. So,
I have to print
You want both of them? Here, here's both of them.
This type of stuff.
so what, am I looking at 2? Oh, okay.
I like your second round
what you
questions.
see as the challenges Washington State face.
Yeah, they're going to get these.
And it looks like some of those are addressed more fully
I
in the
wanna
second
keep-
round questions, aren't they?
I like to leave some of those a second because we want to see how they act on their feet and see how much, how
Without
much due
sitting there
diligence
and-
they've done and looked into our city and
Well,
see.
so yeah, you're right. I think I almost I'm gonna make a pitch for the second round, maybe move forward to the first round, just because once you have got your applicants, it's a lot easier to take a pre-qualified set and group of applicants and do what like Councilman Ivy is saying, and just let them talk with more open questions. I'd like to take this bigger group and really test them with some specific things about Washington, so that we can get a sense of who they are and how they can respond to the challenges that are really out in front of us. As we get narrower with our questions, I think we can be a little bit more general and allow them to bring more to the table. So yeah, I would almost want to see like your round 2 questions be maybe put forward at round 1. So like, what is your vision for Washington City? You know, if you're coming into this, you're applying for this in a big group, and you can't come up with some vision for this city, you probably ought not to make it through round 1. Now, if we revisit that in round 2, I'm okay with that. Philosophy of management, again, that's a great question in there. Fastest growing city, municipal power, budget, and vision, and how they deal with management. Those are really key things to me, and I'd like to see people who can't handle those not bother me with round 2.
I hadn't seen any of these questions until just now. You start talking about the first round. I saw your second round questions as I was reading through them and thought, well, those are some good questions. Then Ruth said, oh, this is the first one. I think that second round of questions I think that'll really sift out
So sorry,
Those
I
that are
was, sorry as I was
well qualified
wobbling
versus
back and
those that,
forth, but I think that maybe let's take a stab at just asking everybody here is, how bad would it hurt your feelings if second round questions were moved to first round?
I don't think they all need to go. I mean, I want to save some questions for the interview process. I mean, I want not a ton. I mean, you're already going to be reading their whole, got 30 plus applicants. We're going to be reading their whole.
I think we'll weed a lot out just on their face, Ruth. Just when you see the applicant and you can see how they're phrasing, you can see their writing skills and things like that. I think you'll vet a lot of them out before. And I think we can come up with other good questions, but those certainly in round 2 drill down on what I will be really paying a lot of attention to, what those answers are, because really it kind of covers all aspects.
And I actually appreciate Councilman Coates's, what he said, his ability to think on your feet.
Yeah.
I like that when you bring up power or you bring up management philosophy and they're not prepared for it. Well, you're going to get a more genuine.
But
So
I also like,
take a look at like question 1 in there compared to the last question on the second round. What do you specifically know about Washington and our community versus what is your vision for Washington? Because if you don't have a vision for Washington, you don't know anything about this city. So I would replace those 2. I would move that one forward. And then,
I like that actually.
yeah,
do.
So then as you look at, but also
Because what do you know about it? Yeah. What is your vision? You can
yeah.
incorporate what you know about it, and you must know about it in order to have a vision for it. So I could support swapping or just moving that one to replace question 1.
So you'd have to know where the city come from to know where it's going.
So question 2 on the first round, I guess I'm fine with that. So question 3, I would rather see a more specific approach, especially because and go with like question 1 on there. So question 3 on here reads, as a new city manager coming into an established city, how would you address the potential challenges and personal and cultural? That question doesn't actually make sense to me. And the public image
Personnel,
of
challenges with personnel.
excuse me, personnel and image of, this is the part I have trouble with, and the public image of the departments. I don't understand kind of what we're going with there.
We could probably rephrase that one better. I agree with that.
But, and I could go either way, because that does, talking about your management style, the specific issues that we might face here and the way, but I think you.
Is it better to, instead of talking, how would you in a hypothetical stance, because we're asking them a vision in question 1, possibly, I would almost like to hear how they've dealt with those in the past. How have you dealt with personnel challenges? How have you established culture? How have you improved departments?
See, but I see that as,
or is that more of a
that's
second round question?
When you ask them their experience and they can explain it instead of writing it all out. I mean, I don't want a dissertation to have to go through.
That's a good point.
I want some quick, I mean, I look at these questionnaires as I don't want more than a paragraph on each of that. I just want something simple that it can explain and not get way off into the weeds, is how I'm looking at it. And be precise with your answers.
And public image of the city or public image.
Yeah. That's how I'm looking at the first round, is what can they tell me in a short amount of time that tells me they should be able to move on based on these questions. And I think the top 16 is going to be able to do that.
And again, we'll also have their application. So
Yeah.
we'll have their application and whatever else they submit as part of that.
This is supposed to just help us a little bit more, right?
Get to round two.
Based on that,
Just look at your round 1 is just trying to eliminate
agreed.
some of the applicants.
Disqualifying.
And your round 2 is to really get in-depth questions on getting to know that applicant. And I like the round 2 just because you want to look at their behaviors, their character, how they speak, how they respond, rather than just typing it in an email and responding it back. Anyone can sharpen their pencil and type something really great.
And we may, as we go down this process after the first round, we may see some questions that are not there that maybe need to be added, because we may recognize some deficiencies. And so let's not put this in stone, but just say maybe those round 2 questions could be looked at after round 1, just to, after we read the interview, there might be just some glaring information that we're not getting.
And with round 3, how in depth? So you as our HR director have to follow certain guidelines, but I don't want a surprise. I don't want to have somebody who came from another city who had issues in a certain area have the same issues here, right? So as a council member, I can follow up. I mean, can we run credit reports? Can we have,
I wouldn't do that till you get to your final applicant.
but I'm talking round 3.
So when you get to your round 3,
I just want no surprises.
usually your backgrounds don't take place maybe 2. You're not going to go do backgrounds on 3 different people. You might would dig on 2.
But I just find that there's patterns of behavior, and I just want to make sure that to the best that we can, I want to understand what are those prior patterns of behavior, because I think that's going to predict how that individual will perform here. And so I don't really want to leave any stone uncovered.
So Ruth, wouldn't the city though initiate those background checks on those last 2 anyway?
We would.
Those aren't going to be like FBI checks and checking with their
But a
credit
phone
report.
call, we can
No,
make
that's-
phone calls, and whoever
that's
will
the
speak to us
point.
can speak to us.
You're going to see the cheetah spots or the stripes by calling people in the industry who are willing to say it. So it'd be tough if There's certain people you wouldn't call because there's not connections. They don't trust what's going to be said. Others that you go to who just know from Wasatch Front, people are going to know who the city managers who run in those circles and they just will. There's going to be some folks and whoever has close connections with trusted people, that's who they ought to talk to, because you'll see, yeah, because you're right. Those cheetah spots don't change just because they cross the county line. And I think we're going to be able to find that big stuff, because you're right. That stuff doesn't tend to change. But I think we can find them out. It's like you'd find out in almost any other job. You do it that way too. Like sometimes it's because a council member knows a council member in Ogden. Maybe it's because the mayor knows a mayor somewhere else. Maybe because somebody knows the chief of police at some. They're going to know the info as long as you trust it. So you guys might just have to work together to find out where you're going to cut through and find out what the spots look like.
So I had
We've looked as far as even going as when we brought Roger on, we contacted his council members, his mayor, his co-workers, his neighbors, his newspaper man. We checked into his neighborhood. And so that's how in depth we went with references.
You know, Ruth, I had a person that I don't know well, but I do know who he is. He's a city manager in Utah, reach out to me and said, basically, when you get it narrowed down, if you want to call me, I know most all of them, and I can tell you, I can answer any questions you have. Well, I'm going to tell you, I won't do that.
I wouldn't recommend
I
that.
won't do that for a lot of reasons, but the main reason is, to me, it's about giving everyone a fair shot so that they can, and it may just be that the person that reached out to me is biased and trying to direct you to one person rather than directing you away from other people to do that. So just that happened, and I wasn't offended by it at all, only that I knew immediately that I wouldn't entertain that.
So going back to these questions, can we agree on a change for 3?
Which ones are we looking on? The
first
round
round,
or
right?
round 2?
Question 3.
The new city manager? What would you like it to say?
Well, it doesn't make sense to me the way it is there. I can see that we're trying to get to something about the public image of the departments. We're talking about cultural and personnel and potential challenges.
I think culture addresses the public image.
So just take out that last part.
What if we just take out the personnel culture of the city?
Challenges with personnel, culture, and the city. Is that what you're saying? City reputation?
I don't know.
He's always throwing his noodles to see if it And then question, where did we get to with that one? If you wanted to try to read back on us,
On number 3?
please.
No, see, I like the public images just because how are they going to handle when publics come in with complaints about departments? How are they going to respond to the
Well, that honestly, that was
complaints
my
that come
first
in?
blush with that is thinking, we've got issues and we got problems. How are you going to deal with it? But
How would you? But how would you if you did
if you
have
have
an
a city,
issue?
you have issues. So
If you did have a personnel issue, how are they going to adjust that? If you do have departmental issues, how do they handle that? I mean, those are real life things that we deal with that we need to know. How would they address that?
Couldn't you have that in a second round? Have you had experience in it with a departmental issue?
I think
And
that's
how
a
did
great-
you handle it?
That's a great second round.
That's a great. You could ask this question: did you ever deal with any department heads or department issue, and how did you handle that, and what was the outcome?
So just drop 3 altogether.
Let me try a stab at it. As a new city manager coming into an established city, so I jotted some notes down here before. Coming to city, help us get an appreciation for how you would build and enhance culture, deal with potential challenges, and preserve the public image of our city.
So you need to email me if those are ones we're going to add because I can't write all that.
Well, that's fine.
That's a wordy question.
I
I know,
I
maybe
try
we
to
could-
take it from this one here. You were sounding like you wanted a scrap question. As a new city manager coming into an established city, help us get an appreciation for how you would build and enhance culture, deal with potential challenges, and preserve the public image of our city. If Councilman Coates is, no, I was just going to say, in Councilman Coates' view, you want short answers and concise answers. That's not the question.
That's what I would like on this first round. But
One paragraph answers.
yeah, just, I mean,
I don't think you're going to get a lot of wordy. I mean, you're asking the questions that
I
we're
don't know,
asking.
you might end up with a
I think
whole,
you get wordy ones.
I don't think
I
you're
agree
going to
with
get that wordy.
Council City. I think you ought to say, please limit answers.
In a paragraph or two.
Please limit answers to, you know,
I'd actually like that.
I disagree. Don't tell them that they have to limit them. Just remind them at the very bottom that you're applying to a council of elected officials whose attention span is not going to favor somebody who is very lengthy.
I guess you could
Lengthy-
start the
lengthy
question. with,
responses
"Can
at
you
your own peril."
briefly respond to the following questions.
you just have to have, Rick can set it up so everyone can kill it.
So where did we get to? Question 3, is it on or off, up or down? I can go either way.
I'm
I think-
okay
I
with,
think we
I'm
all-
okay with leaving it as challenges with personnel and culture of the city. And just keeping it simple and then get into a more detailed one.
I
Question,
think simple
so-
answers.
so question 1, does
By
that
the
help?
way, I didn't mind
That's
the
fine.
way you wrote your question. I actually really liked it. And I
But
wouldn't
agree.
mind
If
it down
your
that,
goal is brevity, I agree.
but as long as we're not saying, hey, I need a
we're-
dissertation.
I feel
on
like I'm losing a couple council members though. So question 1,
Chris
are
is
we on or
back up.
off?
He's
No,
like,
no reason.
hurry up, Doug. I'm walking out the door.
I'm holding on to his coat.
Don't talk about food. I'm starving.
Does question 1 tell us anything that we want to know about our applicants?
Does question 1?
Question 1,
Question 1 tells us
round 1, question 1.
what they know about our city.
Yeah, and I want to hear something about heritage and I want to hear something funny like we have the damn road and the hellhole. I don't know. I just, whatever they put.
But that's part of the intrigue in this is
Okay.
be able to see what they put down.
If they knew that, then obviously they have done some research.
That's right. Or they just intrinsically know it.
Well, once again, I think you got to hash these out so that Ruth can have a little direction so that we can hit the ground running when we're ready to send these
So
out.
it sounds like we're doing 1, 2, 3 with the modified last sentence. Or I had heard was an okay, leave on.
I don't mind it.
I do want something that touches on that subject. Whether it's
Which subject?
What topic's
Number-
that, Councilman?
you number 4, that's the one we're on, right? That's the one she said. I want something that talks about, skills and abilities.
Isn't that what it asks?
Leave that
Yes,
one on.
That's what I'm
Oh.
saying. I agree. I want something.
Oh,
that
yeah.
asks
You want
that.
this question.
I don't know that I'm not in love with this question per se, but I want something that touches on that topic. Or maybe I need to choose different words to say that.
What skills, ability, and talent do you possess that will enhance the current service? Says Washington City provides our community.
I think it'd be nice for somebody in the profession to say, here's the greatest assets I bring.
I think you're misunderstanding me. I like question 4.
And then 5, we're just going to modify to a yes, no. Does the range fit within your means? Yes, no.
So I think we're clear. At
Good
least I'm
on-
clear that I just understood that we're good with the questions with a little rewording on 3 and 5.
Correct. That's how I have it.
Back to 5, not to labor it, but it'll be curious to see what they want to be paid. It would be good for them to
I
play
think
that
so,
card.
but whatever
All
you
they can
guys
say is they
want.
More than 150,000.
But what if they're willing to do it for the lower end of it and they find them to be a highly qualified candidate?
Then we still make the offer.
Then we're okay with that, aren't we?
I guess the only thing I would care is that just don't read too much into the offer more than
Agreed.
just don't be set in
No.
stone on
But as
I
is,
say leave it.
it's a moving target. I just don't want us to get, oh, well, they said only 110. That's what I'm sticking with.
I mean, they should know what the posted pay range is. I would just say, what wage? Just the last part of it. What wage do you need in order to serve as the Washington city manager?
Down to the
If they can't look up the pay range and know that
we'll
themselves.
take off the pay range or leave it on.
I would take it off.
It was a weird.
Oh, does it have the pay range already on there?
No.
it just
Well, it's
says
on the-
within,
It's on
within
the,
the posted pay range. I'm saying skip that and just say, what would you need in order to serve as the Washington city manager?
I don't. However you think. I don't have a strong opinion on that.
Also, just take the numbers off.
there's no
There's
numbers
no
on there.
numbers.
He's just saying remove with it the preface, which is within the pay range. He's
What
saying
pay-
drop
what
that.
pay do you need? And it probably does need to say pay, just so it's clear. I'm fine. Leave it the way it is. It's fine. I'm not making it that much better.
I got to change stuff all the time, Doug.
What?
You're just changing stuff all the time. Ruth works so hard, and then
I
I just have to say it because I wanted to change that one.
Okay, so we're good with round one. Round two, you guys are going to
Work on it.
Collaborate.
modify.
Moving target.
But we like what you have so far.
So I'm hoping I can understand what I've scribbled on here. It looks like Jeff's writing.
I think we just took a big circle and came back mostly to what
Yeah.
you had already presented us. So
Oh, I'll kind of do
other
a
than that
draft.
question 3, Councilman Coates had just dropped that public image
Public image.
department's part.
Perfect. And then I'll go through and just make sure I will go through the dates that we have here and just send them out to you and make sure I understood them correctly and we're all on
Send
the
them
same
out in an email and put them on the calendar.
Yeah,
That would be
on the
great,
calendar
Ruth.
would be very helpful.
Any additional questions, comments? I think I've kept you here too long, so I'm entertain a motion to adjourn.
Did we stay here
So moved.
longer than the air conditioning?
Second.
That doesn't
I think so.
I don't care.
Okay, we're
Councilman-
adjourned.
Councilman
We're
I,
adjourned.
Coates.
Thank you.
I said so moved because I knew Doug would have a question after the motion.
Council-
So
I
I've
told him
already
it didn't
seconded
count.
by Staley.
Councilman Coates made a motion and Councilman
We got the-
Staley seconded it.
we got the mayor pro temp working, trying out his skills.
I just know that Tara is still upstairs trying to write down that information.
Looking for a
All
vote,
right,
Mayor.
gentlemen. Thank you so much for,
I would like to say one more thing.
absolutely.
I
We vote, don't we?
Aye.
Aye.
That's Coates. Aye.
That'd be Ivy. Aye.
I want you to get out of here.
Staley, aye.
Thanks, gentlemen. Actually, that was very good this evening. Thank you.